Aristotle believed that most human beings never experience genuine friendship in their entire lives. Not once. Not even close. And he wrote that in 350 BC, before social media, before networking apps, before the word connection became a commodity traded for professional advantage. In the Nicomachean Ethics, Books VIII and IX, Aristotle treated friendship, he called it philia, not as a pleasant addition to a good life, but as one of its most essential components. He wrote, and I quote, "Without friends, no one would choose to live, though he had all other goods." That is not a sentiment. That is a philosophical claim. And it carries a precise and uncomfortable implication, that a life without true friendship is, by Aristotle's standard, an incomplete life, regardless of status, wealth, or achievement. We live in an era of unprecedented social connectivity. Most adults in the Western world carry hundreds of so-called friends in their pockets at all times. And yet study after study in the 21st century points to a loneliness epidemic of historic proportions. Aristotle would not have been surprised. He saw this coming, not as a technological prediction, but as a logical consequence of misunderstanding what friendship fundamentally is. Before we go further, if this kind of philosophy interests you, subscribe. We publish new videos every week on ideas that actually change how you think. What follows are 4 insights from Aristotle's philosophy of friendship. 4 things he understood with extraordinary clarity, that the modern world has almost entirely forgotten. Aristotle was a categorizer by temperament. Before he could argue anything about friendship, he needed to define it with precision. And so, in Book VIII of the Nicomachean Ethics, he identified 3 distinct kinds of philia, 3 reasons human beings associate with one another and call the result friendship. The first kind is friendship based on utility. You are useful to me. I am useful to you. We cooperate. We exchange. We call each other friends. Aristotle acknowledged this is real in a limited sense. Business partners, colleagues, neighbors who share resources, these relationships have value. But they dissolve the moment the utility disappears. The person who was your closest work ally when your projects aligned becomes a distant acquaintance the moment circumstances change. The relationship was never about the person. It was about the function. The second kind is friendship based on pleasure. We enjoy each other's company. We share interests, humor, entertainment. These friendships feel warmer than utility-based ones, and they are, but they are equally conditional. When the pleasure fades, when tastes diverge, when novelty wears off, when life pulls 2 people in different directions, the friendship dissolves just as completely. Aristotle writes that these 2 forms are accidental friendships. The friend is not loved for who they are, but for what they provide. And here Aristotle makes his sharpest observation: the vast majority of what modern life calls friendship falls entirely into these 2 categories. Think of your contact list. Think of your social connections. How many of those relationships would survive if you became neither useful nor entertaining to the other person? The third kind of friendship, what Aristotle calls friendship of virtue, or perfect friendship, is categorically different. In this form, you value the other person not for what they give you, but for who they are. For their character. For their excellence as a human being. Aristotle writes in Book VIII, Chapter 3, perfect friendship is the friendship of men who are good, and alike in virtue. This kind of friendship is not a transaction. It is not an exchange. It is a form of mutual recognition, 2 people who see each other clearly and choose each other deliberately, not out of need, but out of admiration for character. The first insight, then, is this: most of what we call friendship is something else entirely. And until we can name the difference with Aristotle's precision, we cannot begin to pursue what is being missed. But knowing the categories is only the beginning. Because Aristotle's second insight concerns something even more inconvenient, the role of time. There is a line in the Nicomachean Ethics that has the quality of something carved in stone. Aristotle writes, in Book VIII, Chapter 3, "Those who are friends in a short time wish to be so, but are not yet so, unless they both are worthy of love and know it. For it is necessary to eat salt together," meaning, to spend time together, before friendship is fully formed. Eat salt together. In the ancient Greek world, sharing salt meant sharing meals, sharing labor, sharing the slow and unremarkable passage of ordinary time. Aristotle is saying something precise here. Perfect friendship cannot be fast. It cannot be efficient. It cannot be optimized. It requires accumulation, the accumulation of shared experience, shared difficulty, shared revelation. Consider what this means in a practical sense. The modern world is engineered for speed. Relationships form quickly, through brief digital interactions, through curated self-presentation, through the compression of intimacy into moments of peak performance. We show people our best selves in controlled environments and call the result connection. Aristotle would call it something far less, an impression, perhaps, or a beginning. But not friendship. Because genuine friendship requires that you have seen another person under pressure. That you have witnessed their response to failure, to grief, to frustration, to the unglamorous texture of ordinary life. And that they have seen the same in you, and that both of you remained. This is not romanticism. This is Aristotle being coldly realistic about what it takes for one human being to truly know another. He writes that such friendships are rare, and he says so without apology. Not as a lament, but as a statement of fact. Perfect friendship is rare because the conditions it requires, time, virtue, mutual recognition, are genuinely difficult to satisfy. The second insight, then, is this: if your friendships have not required significant time and a degree of difficulty to sustain, they have not yet been tested. And what has not been tested has not yet been proven. But Aristotle does not stop at the demand for time. His third insight moves into territory that is far more philosophically radical, and far more personally confronting. Of all the things Aristotle wrote about friendship, this is perhaps the most radical, and the most misunderstood. In Book IX of the Nicomachean Ethics, he makes a claim that goes far beyond what most people expect from a philosophical text on human relations. He writes, "A friend is another self. Allos autos, in the original Greek. Another self. Not a companion. Not an ally. Not someone who makes life more pleasant. Another self." To understand what Aristotle means, you need to understand his broader philosophy of the soul. Aristotle believed that the highest form of self-knowledge, the clearest perception of your own character, your own virtues, your own flaws, is extremely difficult to achieve through introspection alone. We are too close to ourselves. We are too invested in our own self-image. We rationalize. We minimize. We construct narratives that protect rather than illuminate. A true friend, in Aristotle's view, functions as a mirror, not a flattering one, but an accurate one. Someone who knows you well enough, and cares about you genuinely enough, to reflect your character back to you with clarity. This is why, in Book IX, Aristotle argues that the person who lacks true friends lacks something essential to the examined life. Not just companionship. Not just support. The actual cognitive capacity for self-knowledge. This is a startling claim. It means that Aristotle's theory of friendship is not separable from his theory of virtue. To become a better person, to identify your own errors of character and correct them, you need someone who sees you clearly and speaks honestly. And who can only do that because they are not you, and yet know you almost as well as they know themselves. Now consider what this demands of us as friends. Not simply to be present. Not simply to be pleasant. but to engage with another person's character at a level of depth and honesty that most modern relationships actively avoid. We are socialized toward approval. We are rewarded for making people feel good. Aristotle is arguing for something harder and more valuable, the willingness to be a truthful witness to another person's life, and to allow them to be the same for you. The third insight, then, is this: a friend is not someone who makes you comfortable. A friend is someone in whose presence you become more clearly yourself. But there is one final layer to Aristotle's thinking, one that reframes everything we have discussed so far, and it may be the most demanding insight of all. Modern culture treats friendship as something that happens to you. You meet someone and you click. There is warmth, affinity, chemistry. Friendship, in this view, is essentially an emotional experience, something you feel, not something you do. Aristotle would find this account deeply inadequate. And his final insight on the subject is perhaps the most demanding of all. In the Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle locates perfect friendship squarely within his broader theory of virtue. Virtue, for Aristotle, is not a feeling or a disposition or a natural talent. Virtue is a practiced activity, a habit cultivated through deliberate, sustained effort over time. He writes in Book II, "We become just by doing just acts, temperate by doing temperate acts, brave by doing brave acts." Friendship, in its highest form, follows exactly the same logic. You do not become a true friend by feeling warmly toward someone. You become a true friend by acting like one, consistently, deliberately, over time, regardless of convenience, regardless of reciprocal benefit in any given moment. This means that friendship, at Aristotle's highest level, is an expression of moral character. It requires the same virtues that govern the rest of ethical life: honesty, courage, justice, practical wisdom. It requires honesty, the willingness to speak truthfully even when the truth is unwelcome. It requires courage, because genuine honesty in a close relationship carries real risk. It requires justice, the steady commitment to give the other person what they genuinely need, not simply what they want. And it requires practical wisdom, phronesis, the capacity to judge correctly what the situation demands. This is why, for Aristotle, you cannot have a great friendship if you are not yourself working to become a person of good character. A vicious or dishonest person can have utility-based friendships. They can have pleasure-based friendships. But they cannot have perfect friendship, because they are not capable of the moral conduct that perfect friendship demands. The fourth insight, then, is this: if your friendships are shallow, the question Aristotle is asking you to consider is not about the quality of the people you have met. It is about the quality of the person you are bringing to your relationships. This is the culminating argument. And it is the one that changes everything, because it turns the question of friendship into a question of character. Which means it cannot be solved by finding better people. It can only be solved by becoming one. Let us hold the full argument together for a moment. Aristotle identified three kinds of friendship, and argued that two of them, however common, are not what the word ultimately deserves to name. He insisted that genuine friendship requires time, the slow accumulation of shared experience that cannot be manufactured or accelerated. He proposed that a true friend is another self, a living mirror of your own character, and that without such a person, the examined life is genuinely incomplete. And finally, he placed friendship within the domain of virtue, meaning that the quality of your friendships is, in the end, a direct reflection of the quality of your character. None of this is comfortable. All of it is true. The question Aristotle leaves us with is not, how do I find better friends? The question is, am I the kind of person capable of perfect friendship at all? That is a question worth sitting with. Not briefly, but at length, with the patience and honesty that Aristotle believed friendship itself requires. Aristotle spent a lifetime studying what it means to live well. The least we can do is spend 10 minutes thinking about it. Subscribe if you want to keep thinking.